All right, Rick, first pick of the second round. The Bills are finally getting their wide receiver, Keon Coleman, out of Florida State. I gave it an A-. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, no, I think this is a great fit in Buffalo. They need a big physical presence down the field. He plays a lot faster than he timed at the 40. This guy is going to go up and win contested situations. He's going to be a great red zone threat, so I think this was an excellent pick by the Buffalo Bills, and they were able to add draft capital.
Exactly. He just turned 21. He is only going to get better. He ran a 4.61, plays much faster than that. And when he was at Michigan State, he ran a bigger variety of routes. I think he's going to be really good. The A- came in because Ladd McConkey was still there, but this is a great pick for the Buffalo Bills. The Chargers trade up a few spots, Rick. They don't get a Michigan player, which is your bold prediction. Instead, they get wide receiver Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. A+ for me. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think he's the best route runner coming out in this year's draft. I think he may be a slot only, but in this system, he's going to be able to fit and separate underneath. Will be a nice security blanket for Justin Herbert.
There are worse consolation prizes in the Keenan Allen world than Ladd McConkey, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, I think both of them are going to be impact players for both of the teams.
So they lost Keenan Allen, they lost Mike Williams, they still have Josh Palmer, of course, Quentin Johnson going into year 2, and now Ladd McConkey joins that offense with Justin Herbert. The Falcons are back on the clock, 3 picks into the second round here, and they're taking defensive tackle, which we thought they were going to do early. Instead, they take Rook Ororo out of Clemson. I give this a B- because Johnny Newton was still sitting there, but I understand the pick. What do you think?
Yeah, no, this kid has length. He has athleticism. Just learning the game of football. He's only played 2 years of high school football before he came in. Needs to get his pad level lower in the run game, but he has a lot of potential as an inline pass rusher.
I think he had, exactly, the athleticism is there, and I think the potential, as we talked about, to play sooner than later, because we thought that maybe Byron Murphy II would go 8th overall. Instead, of course, Michael Penix Jr. was the number 8 pick for Atlanta, and now they circle back and they get that defensive tackle. The Washington Commanders got their quarterback in Jaden Daniels early in the first round, Rick. They don't go offensive line here. Instead, they go defensive line. They get Johnny Newton out of Illinois. He could have been a first-round pick. A- was my grade because of some potential other needs. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he fell a little bit because of the injury he had at the end of the season. I don't know if he eventually worked out or not for any teams, but I think it gives them another inline pass rusher. They're going to have to generate pass rush on the quarterbacks in the NFC East, and I think this kid, with his motor, the way he plays sideline to sideline, and his ability to rush the passer, will be an excellent addition.
Is there a better group of interior defensive linemen than what Washington has, and Deron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and now Johnny Newton?
Yeah, but don't be surprised if they don't get a couple edge guys here before this is said and done.
That's right. They lost Montez Sweat. They lost Chase. The Patriots trade down a few spots. They pass on Ladd McConkey, but they get Jaylen Pul, wide receiver out of Washington. I gave this a B-. I understand on some level, Rick, that you have Demario Douglas to play in the slot, and maybe you want to get Jaylen Pul, who's inside-outside. He's a little bigger. Only ran the 4.52. What do you think of that B- grade?
Yeah, I'm okay with that grade. I think that he is not as sudden as Ladd McConkey. I think that he does a great job gliding into and out of his route. I'd like to see a little bit better burst. He can track the deep ball. He was one of the trio at the University of Washington that Michael Penix was thrown to. So I think he will help, but I don't know if I would have passed up Ladd McConkey for him.
And to be clear, Jaylen Polk's a second-round pick all day long, but when you're balancing Ladd McConkey, a potential first-rounder, he could have gone late in round 1 with Jaylen Polk. I think Ladd gives you more sooner, it feels like?
Yeah, no, this kid will come in and contribute right away. He just needs to get a little stronger and a little bit more sudden. So
the Patriots got their quarterback in Drake May. Now they get him a wide receiver in Jaylen Polk. The Titans have drafted 2 players. They combined for over 700 pounds of human. They got J.C. Latham in round 1. They circle back and get someone who's somehow bigger than J.C. Latham, Devonte Sweat, defensive tackle out of Texas, the second defensive tackle drafted through the first round and some change here. I give this a C, Rick, for only one reason. The off-field concerns. He had the DUI a few weeks ago, and that's a problem for me. I know teams were concerned with his partying, and he had to talk about that at the combine and the interviews. Player-wise, he's great. I'm concerned about the off-field. What do you think about the C grade?
Yeah, no, I think he's a big, massive human being, and he's going to be able to plug against the run up front, and it's hard to move him off the point. The question is, can he give anything as a pass rusher in line? We saw some of the power down at the Senior Bowl in the one-on-one drills, but I think he's more of a 2-down nose tackle. They're still going to have to get some inline pass rush.
And last year, Jalen Carter slipped a little bit. He was productive when he was on the field. It's not the end of the world for Devonte Sweat, but these are certainly questions that teams are asking prior to drafting someone like this, right?
Yeah, and apparently the Tennessee Titans felt comfortable after they did all their research on the DUI.
Yeah, and if you watch Devonte Sweat on the field, he is hard to block while also blocking out the sun, and now he's in Tennessee alongside Jeffrey Simmons. For a team that didn't have a lot of first-round picks in the Sean McVay era, they are crushing it so far. Round 1, they got Jared Verse. Round 2, they circle back, get another defender. Jared Verse's teammate from Florida State, Braden Fisk. I give this an A, defensive lineman. We loved him at the Combine. We loved him at the Senior Bowl. What's your reaction to this A grade from me?
Yeah, no, they're just taking good football players, and they're following their board and just taking the best players available as they come. This kid plays with as hot a motor and energy that anyone in this draft. And the knock on him was his short arms, but he talked about that when we were on the set at CBS at the Combine. And he is so quick off the ball that it's hard for the offensive linemen to get their hands locked on him. He knows how to work the edges of offensive guards or whoever he's going against, and he could put pressure on the quarterback. Watch him against Florida. He put an outstanding show on there, and he'll be a dominant defensive tackle, especially as a pass rusher in the near future.
First 2 picks, the Rams crushed it last year. They got Kobe Turner on day 3. They got Byron Young in the 3rd round. That defense is getting faster, stronger, and younger. Welcome to Los Angeles, Braden Fisk. The Eagles are all about solidifying the secondary. 1st round, Quinyon Mitchell. 2nd round, they get a 1st-round talent in Cooper DeJean out of Iowa. This is an A for me, Rick. My question to you is, where is Cooper DeJean going to play in that secondary?
Yeah, when we went through our mocks, or your mocks, and I was correcting them, it was amazing. We had both these guys at one point end up with Philadelphia, so it's ironic they both ended up there. I think they're going to put him at safety, let him learn there. I think most teams that I talked to thought he was going to be a great safety, not because he's not fast or athletic enough to play corner, but because of his football intelligence and how good of a tackler he is. So there's not a lot of great safeties in this draft class. This guy's probably the #1 safety, so I think Howie Roseman did a fantastic job. The Philadelphia Eagles got a lot better in the secondary over these first 2 days.
And you talked about that secondary struggled mightily at times last year. The entire defense did. New defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, and now he has 2 big weapons in that secondary in Philadelphia. The Saints move up into the 2nd round. They get a cornerback, KoolAid McKenry. Rick, 1st-round talent. I gave it an A grade. Paulson Adebo's contract's going to be up after this season. This feels like a need in New Orleans.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great pick, and they're taking another, like a lot of these guys we're talking about have 1st-round value. KoolAid can fit in any system. He can play off. He can play press. I think he's the smoothest corner out of this draft, getting into and out of his transition. The question was a long speed, but I think he's so smart and intelligent. He does stay on top of receivers as he extended downfield. He's willing enough in run support, good enough where it's not a liability. So I think this is a great selection for the New Orleans Saints that fills a huge need.
Sneaky great selection, and they couple that with the offensive tackle, Tully Fuaga, in the 1st round. The Saints are off to a strong start in this draft. The Texans didn't have a 1st-round pick, but their 1st pick in the 2nd round, Rick, Kamari Lasser, cornerback out of Georgia. He played bigger and faster than what he timed and what he measured. He only ran in the 4.6s. Sort of a surprise in that sense. I gave the pick a B. There were still some other cornerbacks out there, Mikey Sanders still, for example, but I love Kamari Lasser's game.
Yeah, I think he's going to fit the scheme that they run down there in Houston. I think he's a zone corner. He can probably play inside at Nick. The thing that really sticks out, he's more than physical and run support, that he is a great zone cover awareness guy. Excellent reacting to routes in front of him. My biggest concern is if the receiver gets on top of him, he has to turn his hips, and he gets extended down the field. Can he stay with that receiver?
And even though he ran in the 4.6s, you have the SEC competition to lean against, and that sometimes outweighs what you might see in shorts and T-shirts, right?
Yeah, but he's 4.6.
You are what your time says you are, but he also is headed to Houston Texans as a cornerback. Great news for Kamari Lasser. The Cardinals are off to a red-hot start, Rick. Marvin Harrison Jr., Darius Robinson in the 1st round. Then they come back and get the cornerback they desperately needed, Max Melton out of Rutgers. I give this an A-. I love the pick. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think he was a late riser.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about him a lot during the fall. Then all of a sudden through this pre-draft process, he continued to rise up draft boards. This kid can play slot. He can play outside. He has excellent speed. He's more than willing to come up and run support. I think the biggest thing is the technical things of this game. He needs to get a little bit smoother in and out of his transition. He needs to get a little bit smoother when he turns and gets extended down the field. He has more than enough speed to stay with receivers down the field. But I know this coaching staff, I know that they'll be able to correct a lot of those technique errors that he currently has.
And Jonathan Gannon showed in year one that he can get the most out of this defense, and I suspect this group's going to be a lot better in year two.
Yeah, and Jonathan Gannon's an excellent coach. In fact, did you know that he was a quality control guy in Minnesota when I was up there in the early 2007, 2008?
You have a pretty good track record, except for the part where you joined the podcast. Max Melton headed to Arizona, where he's going to have a chance for a lot of playing time early in his rookie season. One of our favorite players in the pre-draft process, Jackson Powers Johnson, finally hears his name called in round two. He's headed to the Las Vegas Raiders. He's going to have a chance to be a day one starter as well. Rick, I gave this an A. What do you think about that grade?
Yeah, I thought he was the most dominant center I've seen come out in a long time at the University of Oregon. He's big, he's strong, he's physical. He can move those nose tackles off at the point. He's stout in pass protection. He's played guard in the past. And Tom Telesco, and I know him very well, he's staying true to his board by getting Brock Bowers, was probably the highest player on his board, and I'm sure Jackson Powers Johnson also was there as well.
All right, you have to answer this question. With the Rick Spielman board, how would you have graded Byron Murphy in the first round and then Jackson Powers in the second round? Is that higher than Brock Bowers and Jackson Powers?
I'm going to say I'm going to trust Tom Telesco, but I do like Jackson Powers Johnson because I dress like I have drip. I think that's what he said.
Jackson Powers Johnson did, in fact, say that Rick had drip, but that's a conversation for another time. For now, he's headed to Las Vegas for a chance to start right away for those Raiders. The Packers get Edgerrin Cooper, linebacker out of Texas A&M in round two. My linebacker one, your linebacker one. I give this an A, Rick. After getting Jordan Morgan in round one, they come back and get someone to help them middle that defense.
Yeah, I wasn't so sure about the Jordan Morgan pick, but I am sure about this one. And with Jeff Hafley coming in as their defensive coordinator, former Boston College head coach, it's going to fit his scheme. They're going to a 4-3, which means even front instead of an odd front, which they ran under Joe Barry. This kid is an excellent athlete, can play sideline to sideline. He is one of the few linebackers that I see can knock running backs backward when he hits them in a hole. He's very good in coverage, and the one thing that I think people really recognize is that he can affect the quarterback when they send him on blitzes. So I think this is an A pick for me as well.
So Quay Walker, also an athlete that plays the linebacker position. They have some juice now at linebacker, former first-round pick. They get Edge Cooper in round two. He is headed to Green Bay. The Carolina Panthers are surrounding Bryce Young with playmakers, Xavier Legette at the end of round one. They come back in round two, Rick, and get running back Jonathan Brooks out of Texas. I give this an A-, only because there are some other positions perhaps they could have focused on at offensive line, but he's a dynamic player coming off the ACL injury, but there's no doubt that this offense is going to be much more explosive than they were last year.
Yeah, and Jerry Jones, please don't tell everybody you're drafting that this is a guy that you were targeting in day two. But he's a gifted runner. He's smooth. He's fluid. He's more of a weaver than a stop-start guy. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's not as dynamic as Bijan Robinson when he came out last year. I think that with the way Miles Sanders struggled last year, they still got Chuba Hubbard, but this will be an excellent addition. He doesn't have to play right away, so he can take his time coming off that ACL. But I know Dave Canales likes to run the ball, the new head coach at the Carolina Panthers. This will definitely.
The Giants had a need at safety, and they filled that need in the second round with Tyler Newman out of Minnesota. Ricky gave us a B. We talked to Tyler at the Combine. Young man has an edge. He is tall. He is physical. Only ran in the 4.6s. I thought he played a little bit faster than that, but I wondered if maybe Jaden Hicks might have been a better fit for what they wanted to do. Clearly, the Giants thought otherwise.
No, and I'm going to agree with the Giants. I think this kid is a better fit for their defense. The reason I say that is he can play in the deep center of the field. He's not fast, but he plays everything in front of him. He has excellent anticipation. He has ball production, had a lot of interceptions at the University of Minnesota. He takes great angles when he comes downhill and run support. So I think this is a great fit for the New York Giants.
I agree. He's a really good player. We'll see where Jaden Hicks ends up going, but they also got Malik Neighbors. I'm guessing he's going to be pretty good as well. So the Giants are off to a strong start, getting two really quality players through the first two rounds. Jaguars had need at cornerback, but they also had need at interior defensive line. Mason Smith out of LSU, Rick, is headed to the Jaguars. I give this a B+, and you made a good point. He feels a need, and he feels like a GM Trent Baalke pick as well, right?
Yeah, no, he loves these big, long, athletic defensive tackles. Arik Armstead, they signed when he was released by the San Francisco 49ers. This kid, we were down at his pro day. When he walked into that facility, everybody stared at him because of what he looks like physically. I think he reminded me a little bit of Barmore, who came out of Alabama and plays up in New England right now. He's just untapped right now on what he can potentially be. He missed some time earlier in his career with injuries. He was suspended early in the season last year for an NCAA violation. I think this guy has a high ceiling. Not only as a run defender, he needs to get his pads a little over, but I think he can be an inline pass rusher as well.
And there was first-round buzz about him coming into the beginning of this season. He's a little inconsistent, but to Rick's point, there's an opportunity for him to get a lot better once he arrives in Jacksonville. Mason Smith, now with the Jags. National champion Chris Jenkins, defensive tackle from Michigan, is headed to Cincinnati. I gave this a B in part because Chris Jenkins tested through the roof, and sometimes at Michigan you're asked to do your job and not necessarily be the player that you become in the NFL. What is your expectations for Chris once he gets to Cincinnati?
Yeah, this was a need for the Cincinnati Bengals after DJ Reader went up to the Detroit Lions. So he is a very sound defensive tackle is the best way to put it. He plays excellent with technique at the point versus the run. He uses technique to rush the inline passer. He's not a elite in any area, but he's very good in all areas. And the one thing, he comes from great pedigree, and he does play with his hair on fire as well. He just has some limitations, but he'll be a solid addition for the Cincinnati Bengals up front on their defensive line.
And by the way, the defensive line position is not one where you want to be freelancing. You want to do your job and do what's expected of you so your teammates can trust you, and that's exactly what Chris Jenkins brings, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, he'll be a solid, steady pro for a long time.
And now he's headed to Cincinnati, where he joins Amarius Mims, their first-round pick, and, of course, Joe Burrow and crew. Mikey Sanders still is headed to Washington, defensive back from Michigan, former wide receiver as well. I love this player. I love where he's headed. I give it an A. Washington's making some things happen, Rick.
Yeah, no, they were very active this offseason, signing a lot of players. They have to rebuild that whole roster. So I give a lot of kudos to Adam Peters and to Dan Quinn for what they're doing. This is another very good football player that loves the game, plays it with a lot of passion. I think he's a nick only. I don't think he's going to have. He has issues if he has to line up outside versus bigger receivers. Quick, athletic, excellent ball skills. Needs to get better in man coverage, just recognizing routes, but that'll come with the more time he's tasked on the job.
And also, he's a converted wide receiver, so he's going to learn. What if I told you, say 24 hours ago, that through 50 picks, the Commanders would have Jaden Daniels, Johnny Newton, and Mikey Sanders still? Would you believe me?
Yes, because I think Adam Perry's they're doing an excellent job.
Yeah, somebody had something to do with Adam Peters getting that job. All right, Mikey Sanders, so congratulations. You're headed to Washington. Join the Commanders. The Steelers got an offensive tackle in round one, Rick and Troy Fautanu. They circle back in round two and get the center they also desperately needed, Zack Frasier out of West Virginia, somehow still sitting there. A+ for me. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's a little rich. I know it's a little bit of a homer grade since you're a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan, but they have definitely helped their offensive line. Arthur Smith wants to run the football. Mike Tomlin, this is going to be a very physical football team. By getting these two offensive linemen and Zack Frasier, who was a former state high school wrestling champion, which is usually a great sign. They're going to be a great center to league because they know how to use leverage. I think he's a good athlete, not a great athlete, but smart, intelligent, great pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Great value. Centers typically fall out of the first round. That's the case with Zack Frasier, which is great news for Pittsburgh. Zack Frasier is their center headed into 2024. The Colts drafted the first defensive player off the board at 15 with Leatu Latu. They circle back in round two, Rick, and they get a first-round talent, this time at wide receiver, A.D. Mitchell out of Texas. I give this an A. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I thought this kid really improved since he transferred in from Georgia to what he did this year down in Texas. If you watch the Alabama game, he put on a clinic. I still think he needs to develop as a route runner, but he's long, he's athletic, he has speed, he's a natural hands catcher. They just got another offensive weapon for Anthony Richardson.
Last year they drafted Josh Downs out of the slot. Anthony Richardson's going to return from injury. This offense is going to be stacked for Shane Steichen. Now that includes A.D. Mitchell. The Washington Commanders are crushing the draft through 2 rounds, Rick, and they get who I thought was one of my favorite players. Turns out it is, in fact, your favorite player, tight end Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State, A+ all day long. What do you think about that?
He was my favorite player first, so just so we can put that
I'll give you that.
This is a kid that has the most versatility for a tight end. You can put him at fullback, you can put him at H-back. He's an excellent blocker. He showed up as a receiver down at the Senior Bowl. He's a better athlete than I think people anticipated. He's a guy that was going to be a tone setter on the offensive side of the ball. When you watch him catch, he's an underrated athlete with the ball in his hands after the catch. Gives him versatility across the board on that offensive scheme that Cliff Kingsbury is going to run. This is an A++ for me.
Oh, you get an extra plus. By the way, when we talked to Mr. Sinnott at the Combine, who was he telling teams that he compared himself to?
Sam Laporta.
So if Jaden Daniels and Cliff Kingsbury get Sam Laporta, this is an A++++. Ben Sinnott headed to Washington. Because all Jim Schwartz, the defensive coordinator, needs in Cleveland is more firepower on the defense. Rick, they went down the road to Ohio State, got Michael Hall Jr., incredibly twitched up defensive lineman. I give this an A. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think it's a little rich because I think he's going to be a situational pass rusher. He is undersized, but there's no denying his first step quickness and his ability to get to the quarterback. I think he needs to be a little bit more consistent against the run, but that's due to his lack of size. But I think he'll be a very good inline pass rusher that may be in a rotation next year for him.
That was the Browns' first pick. Didn't come till round 2. They get Michael Hall Jr., the explosive defensive lineman out of Ohio State. The Miami Dolphins get Tua Tagovailoa some help along the offensive line, Rick. They get Houston offensive tackle Patrick Paul. We don't know how long Teron Armstead's going to play. I give this a B+.
Yeah, no, I love this kid's size. I love his length. I love his athleticism. I think he's just raw from a technical standpoint. He does play hard. He tries to finish blocks. He's just all over the place. He's like a baby giraffe right now. But I think as they develop him, he can be a starting left tackle in this league.
Well, I'll just say this. If a baby giraffe is playing right or left tackle for Tua Tagovailoa, good luck to the rest of the AFC East trying to pass rush. So Patrick Paul out of Houston, he is headed to South Florida. Marshon Neun almost transferred to Colorado. Rick, he decided to stay at Western Michigan, had a great season, and now he's headed to Dallas. Edge rusher, maybe he plays inside a little bit. We talked to him about that at the Combine. I give this a B+. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I love this kid's motor and energy. I think he's going to be a DPR, designated pass rusher. They did lose a pass rusher, their designated pass rusher, when Armstrong went to the Commanders with Dan Quinn. So this kid has excellent bend. He can get to the quarterback. I was talking to a defensive line coach who actually coached him down at the Senior Bowl, and all the guys he had down there, he thought this kid had the most upside.
Great news for Dallas. I know their fans weren't excited about the lack of activity during the offseason, but they should be pretty excited about Marshon Neun now headed to the Cowboys. We all know about Dallas Turner, but the other edge rusher, number 41 at Alabama, is now a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, Chris Brazwell. Do not sell yourself short on him. We talked to Will Anderson, and he said he is someone to be reckoned with, and now he is headed to Tampa Bay. I give this, Rick, an A.
Yeah, very good football player, had to wait his turn. He was behind Will Anderson, behind Dallas Turner, got his opportunity last year and took advantage of it. I'd like to see him a little more physical at the point versus run, not holding up blocks, but getting off blocks and locating the ball. But this kid can pin his ears back, come off the edge. This is a great fit for Todd Bowles in the Tampa Bay defense.
Yeah, shocked that Todd Bowles likes athletic edge rushers. Chris Brazwell, Yaya Diaby, Logan Hall, Joy Tryon-Shoyinka, on and on it goes. Chris Brazwell is headed to Tampa Bay. Javon Bullard, defensive back, playing the slot, can move a little bit all over here, Rick. He is now headed to Green Bay. I love this player. I love this pick. I thought he had really good tape. I thought he had a good Senior Bowl. A from me.
Yeah, no, he's a very good football player, better football player than he is maybe as an athlete in one-on-one situations. We saw that down at the Senior Bowl where he got exposed a little bit when he had to cover a slot. But once 11-on-11 and team part of the practice started, he was all over the place. This is a very good football player. To me, a poor man's Brian Branch, who we saw play very well in Detroit last year. Brian Gutekunst, the general manager of the Green Bay Packers, said he wanted a young safety to go with Xavier McKinney. I think they got an ace in this one.
Round 2, they get Edge Cooper, the linebacker at Texas A&M. They circle back, get Javon Bullard later in round 2. Great start to day 2 for the Green Bay Packers. Blake Fisher, the quote-unquote other tackle at Notre Dame opposite Joe Alt, who came in more highly rated, is now headed to Houston, where he pencils in as potentially the starter at right tackle, protecting C.J. Stroud. I gave this a B. I wanted to see a little bit more consistency from him, Rick, but that doesn't mean it can't happen once he gets to Houston.
Yeah, no, he is physical as a run blocker at the point. I think he needs to clean up his technique as a pass blocker. He actually got benched in the Louisville game this last offseason, getting beat to the inside numerous times. I think if has all the physical abilities to be a starting right tackle in this league, he does have to clean up his technique. And you love the way he plays and the demeanor he plays with, but also you have to play under control. And that's the one issue that he has. I think he gets too out of control at times.
Last year on day 2, they got starting center Juice Scruggs, who can also play guard. This year, potentially starting right tackle Blake Fisher, headed to Houston. Another one of Rick's favorite players in this draft, Cole Bishop out of Utah. He's headed to Buffalo. I gave this a B+, Rick. They lost Micah Hyde. They lost Jordan Poyer. He feels an obvious need, even though they have, who's the young man they have coming back here? Taylor Rapp is returning. Yes.
Yeah.
So what do you think about this?
Yeah, I love him as a football player. He is a downhill safety. He's a thumper, takes great angles to the ball. He's a little limited in coverage, especially if he has to work in the center of the field. So I think he's more of a half-field safety, but I love his instincts and awareness, and I think this is one heck of a football player. So they lost 2 contributors, key contributors at the safety position. Taylor Rapp and Cole Bishop now will fill those 2 needs.
No first-round pick because the Bills traded down, but in the top of the second, they get Keon Coleman, the wide receiver. Now they circle back towards the end of the second round and get their safety, Cole Bishop. Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn is one of the happiest people right now in the Detroit area. They keep adding on defense, Rick. The latest addition, Ennis Rakestraw Jr. out of Missouri. I love this young man. You love this young man. I get Devin Witherspoon physicality vibes when I watch him. A- for me.
Yeah, no, this is a Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes fit. Just go out and find me a very good football player. This kid is tough. He's a tone setter on the defense. He's not afraid, even though he's a little undersized, to come up and rack people in the run game. He's very good in zone coverage, a little stiff when he has to turn his hips, but I think this is going to add depth to a much-needed secondary that needed a rehaul after this last offseason.
They signed Carlton Davis, so they've added some physicality on the outside. They drafted Terry and Arnold in the first round, and then in round 2, they keep bolstering the secondary with Ennis Rakestraw Jr. The Ravens are without Morgan Moses, and they get their right tackle, Roger Rosengard, into the second round here. I give this an A-. I think sometimes we count the 2 plays he struggled in the finals against Michigan against them. I think overall he was surprisingly athletic and probably a better player than maybe we're giving him credit for.
Yeah, no, the biggest thing and the biggest knock I have on him, he needs to get his pad level a little lower and he needs to get stronger through his lower body. But this kid loves to play the game. I think he tries to grind his way in production versus as a run blocker. I think he needs to lower his pads and sink his hips, and they're going to bull rush him. But he has excellent feet to mirror any type of finesse-type moves coming off the edge.
So Daniel Faalele is currently listed as a right tackle. Do you think Roger Rosengard has a chance to win that job?
I think there'll be competition. I just wish he needs just to get a little bit stronger, but I think all the other tools are there.
Absolutely, and I think the Ravens have done a great job finding hidden gems, and they found another one perhaps in Roger Rosengard. The Chiefs got the fastest player in this draft class in round 1, Xavier Worthy. I don't think the guy they took in the second round, Kingsley Sumatea, runs a 4.21, but he is going to be tasked with playing the tackle position, and it could be the left side, it could be the right side. He's out of BYU. I gave this a B. I wanted to see a little more consistency in his tape that I didn't see the last 2 years. Number 1, do you like the grade? And number 2, where are you playing him?
Yeah, I think I like your grade well enough right now. I think he does have some upside to develop. I think he can play on either side. We saw that where he lined up on the left side down to Senior Bowl, also lined up on the right side. He's athletic enough to play left tackle. He'll probably get in competition with Wanye Morris, who they drafted last year. Dewan Taylor should be the starting right tackle for him, so I imagine he'll go to the left side. Just needs to get his pad level a little bit lower. He's a little stiff through his lower body, but I do like the athleticism and the upside.
And he doesn't have to start right away, as you talk about, Rick. So the rich get richer in Kansas City, protecting Patrick Mahomes. Kingsley Sumatea headed to the Chiefs. This guy feels like a 49er, Rick. Renardo Green, one of the most physical cornerbacks in this class. He is now headed to San Francisco as their second-round pick. I gave this a B+. Is there any concerns that he might be too physical?
No, I think he is best as a press corner, and you want to talk about a guy not letting a receiver off and giving him free release at the line of scrimmage. This guy's going to battle you all day long. He's very sticky, staying with receivers into and out of their cuts underneath. The one concern I have is his overall speed. If he gets extended down the field, he's more than tough enough coming up and run support. This is definitely a 49er fit because of the physicality that he brings to the position.
Well, he'll get plenty of practice because he'll be going up against first-round pick Ricky Pearsall in practice, and now Renardo Green adds one more element to that secondary in San Francisco.